New this morning, the Johnson & Johnson company saying its booster shot provides increased protection from COVID-19. Thanks for joining us, everyone, at 6 a.m. I'm Eric Connor.
I'm Stella Escobedo. This new information is according to the company's latest trial results. Johnson & Johnson found the booster was 94% effective at preventing hospitalizations. The company says it will submit all of its data to the FDA for review. Also, new this morning, we could be just weeks away from the COVID vaccine becoming available to kids. Pfizer is seeking emergency authorization of its COVID vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds.
This comes after the company says it studied a smaller dose in just over 2,200 kids. A top FDA official has said that pediatric studies should be large enough to rule out higher risks to kids. News 8's Evan Ronnie is live outside Rady Children's Hospital now with some local reaction as well as what's next in the process here. Good morning, Evan.
Good morning, Eric. That's right. This is news that comes to a lot of families at a time when more than 5 million kids have tested positive for COVID-19. More than 400 children have died due to COVID-19. And while kids have a lower rate of contracting the virus, there is still that high number of spread, especially because of kids going back in the classroom and because of the contagious Delta variant. So now Pfizer announcing yesterday that in the group of 5 to 11-year-olds that they've studied this vaccine on, they say the vaccine is safe and effective for those kids. They're hoping to move forward now with emergency FDA approval.
We want to see long-term studies, and then ultimately there needs to be choice. Families need to be able to make these medical decisions themselves.
If they wanted to rush it, they could have, but this shows that that rigor is not lacking.
And you heard there in that soundbite the mother of the organization Let Them Breathe, as well as a pediatrician. Now, if given approval, it would then be up to parents to decide whether or not they would want to get their children vaccinated. 25% say in a recent study they would get their kids vaccinated. Another 25% saying they would not. 40% saying they would wait and see. Now, in their research, Pfizer says they tested a much lower dose on elementary students, about a third of what an adult would receive. And still, after their second dose, children ages 5 to 11 developed antibody levels just as strong as teenagers and young adults. With kids back in the classroom now and the Delta variant causing a jump in pediatric infections, many parents are awaiting vaccinations for their younger children, but some parents are concerned, however, about the extent of the study. Pfizer says it studied the lower dose in 2,268 kindergartners and elementary school-age kids. Pfizer noted the study is not large enough to detect any extremely rare side effects, such as the heart inflammation that sometimes occurs after the second dosage. So this now moves on to what Pfizer will do in terms of bringing that information to the FDA for emergency use authorization. They have not actually received that authorization yet and haven't even brought that information to the FDA. They'll need to compile the data and the studies that they've put together in order to receive that approval after the FDA goes through their process of discovering whether or not this is safe and effective for those children as well. Then they will have to give their stamp of approval. The FDA saying that could happen as early as about the Halloween time, at least the former commissioner of the FDA saying that. So it is still now a waiting game as to how long it will take for this vaccine to receive that emergency use authorization. Moderna and Pfizer, as well as Johnson & Johnson, all kind of in the running now for getting younger and younger people vaccinated. They say after this receives approval, Pfizer, once it does receive approval, will then be able to administer that vaccine to anyone over the age of 5 years old. Outside of Rady Children's Hospital, I'm Evan Urani, News 8.
Evan, thank you. Del Mar joins a growing list of cities to approve a COVID-19 vaccine mandate for its employees. City Council voted to require full-time and part-time employees to be vaccinated. Imperial Beach considered a similar plan last week, but they didn't make a decision and plan to revisit the issue. Oceanside High School has increased security this morning as police look for a 17-year-old student who stabbed 2 adults and punched another teen in the face during a fight. This happened yesterday afternoon in a parking lot at the edge of campus. The woman who was stabbed has life-threatening injuries. The male victim, who police say was not involved in the fight, has cuts on his arm. The Oceanside Unified School District is working with police to increase patrols in the surrounding neighborhood.
An autopsy is scheduled today to confirm the identity of Gabby Petito. The apparent remains of the 22-year-old were found over the weekend in Wyoming. Her fiance, who is a person of interest in her disappearance during a cross-country road trip, has not been seen in about a week. Federal authorities served a search warrant and raided his family's home in Florida yesterday. And relatives of missing Chula Vista mother Maya Miliete are reacting to developments in the Petito case. The family says the big break in Gabby's case happened when police released photos of her and her fiance's van. That led to a large-scale search effort. Relatives say shortly after Maya disappeared in January, Chula Vista police never asked witnesses to come forward about any vehicles of interest.
We never really got that same search effort
from the police department.
Chula Vista police did not comment over fears it could compromise the investigation. They did tell us the department is committed to seeking justice for Maya.
All eyes are on the United Nations this morning. The UN General Assembly returns to its first in-person meeting of world leaders in 2 years. President Biden is delivering his first speech to the General Assembly as president. And News 8's Chris Groh is joining us live now from the newsroom with the important topics that are up for discussion. Good morning, Chris.
Yeah, good morning, Eric and Stella. President Biden arrived in New York last night. He immediately affirmed his support for the UN and the entire process. And now we wait for his remarks that will happen later this morning.
The vision of the United Nations has never been short in ambition, any more than our Constitution. But the ambition matters.
Now, it's because of the pandemic that this will be the first in-person General Assembly in 2 years. Last year was mostly virtual, but this time about 2/3 of the 193 UN members are sending delegates to New York. Now, as for President Biden, this will be his first address to the General Assembly. So far, this is what we know about President Biden's speech. It will highlight, quote, reestablishing alliances after the last several years. He apparently will make clear that many of the world's problems cannot be solved alone or by one nation. But there are a couple of things weighing heavily on the U.S. right now before President Biden takes the stage. A scrapped submarine deal with France and how it impacts the rest of Europe, as well as the U.S. decision to withdraw from Afghanistan. But despite all of that, President Biden will focus on the idea that the world is turning the page together after 2 decades at war.
Reestablishing alliances doesn't mean that you won't have disagreements. What you'll hear the president talk about tomorrow is that we are committed to those alliances, and that always requires work from every president, from every global leader.
Of course, we are keeping a close eye there on the developments in New York, but you can watch a special report right here on CBS 8 starting at 6:45 our time. Eric and Stella.
Thank you. The Department of Homeland Security is investigating what it is calling troubling footage of Border Patrol agents dispersing Haitian migrants. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says agents on horseback were not using whips to prevent people from crossing the Rio Grande. He explained the agents use long reins to control their horses. This comes as thousands of people set up camp near Del Rio, Texas. The U.S. is flying many of the migrants back to Haiti.
This morning, San Diego City Council will consider the first sewer rate hike in more than 10 years. If approved, sewer rates for single-family homes would increase more than 30% over the next 4 years. The proposal would also reduce sewer rates for businesses, condos, and apartments. These changes are based on 2 studies reporting that the current rates fall well below the cost of treating industrial wastewater. In a separate vote, City Council will also consider a 3% water rate increase.
Taking a look outside here, boy, that moon nice and bright here this morning.
Let me move aside. Look at that moon glow right there. Yeah, this is not the sun coming up because that's a west-facing camera, but Cardiff, oh, I always love when you can see the moon shining on the water. How beautiful is that view? Very clear conditions outside. That's what this also proves to us. Here's our San Miguel camera looking towards the west where you see that big bright moon. It is a harvest moon. The official full moon time was during the daylight hours yesterday afternoon. Our moon will not be setting this morning until 7:09, so it's going to linger. Yeah, the sun is not playing tricks on you. This would be our big bright moon. Sunrise actually happening at 6:36 this morning, so we just have about 25 minutes to go before that. Temperature-wise, this is our coolest time of day. This is your chance to be outside. If you do need to go for a long run, maybe you're training for the rock and roll marathon, perhaps, do that now as opposed to later this afternoon. It's going to get uncomfortably hot in a lot of spots today. 58 degrees in Poway, 59 Escondido, low 60s for our coastline at this hour. And we are all feeling warmer than we were 24 hours ago. So that chill, of course, the early morning hours, we feel it, but it's not as cool as what we just had yesterday. Now, relative humidity numbers, we still notice this moisture, but I'm expecting these numbers to drop over the next few hours. Tomorrow morning at this time, it'll likely feel drier. That's because we have a weak Santa Ana wind event. Here's a day planner for you if you have little ones. Mid-60s to start off this morning. By the middle of the day, low 80s. By this afternoon, upper 70s. You saw the sunshine. We're going to see that all day today. 89 in Poway, 93 for you this afternoon in Ramona. Escondido, 93. So by about 1, 2 o'clock, this is what you'll be facing. So the heat will be upon you. It's going to be even hotter for tomorrow. So I do want to show you this 10-day temperature trend so you can plan accordingly. Expect upper 80s for some areas tomorrow, especially like downtown San Diego. Our average high is 77. So we're about 10 degrees above average today, tomorrow. Then we start that downward trend and things are going to feel cooler and more comfortable and way more fall-like. But that's still a couple days away. All right, let's get a check of traffic now and let you know what's happening. We do have that trouble spot that I want to get right to because this is slowing a lot of people down right now. You see the red on the northbound side of the 15. Now, there was a semi-truck that was involved in this crash. It looks like initial reports were that the semi was swerving. Possibly the driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. So at this point, last check, 2 lanes blocked, right-hand shoulder also blocked. This is right before the Scripps Poway Parkway exit. So this already is a busy commute route for a lot of folks, and you can see that backup. So they're working to clear that quickly, hopefully soon, and we'll keep you updated.